In this video, I'm going to talk about my personal experience of being misdiagnosed when I was younger and how it became a really big challenge and really big barrier of my own learning. It wasn't until I was 21 that I got diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia. They had actually been surprised that it hadn't been picked up before because my reading comprehension age at the time was of a 14-year-old, and my memory at the time was of about a 10-year-old. So my short-term memory was very poor. My long-term memory is much better, but actually I find it very difficult to remember things, and all of that comes under the dyslexia um, part of my learning difficulty. I've found different ways of dealing with things now. Sometimes I use a green overlay, but all of this had been completely misdiagnosed and missed as I was going through education. It made me a lot more determined because I kept getting labelled as lower attaining. So I kept being put into like lower attaining classes for mathematics where I wasn't then getting challenged enough, but it wasn't being represented in my examination results. So my work was very inconsistent with what was down in my exams. So I was predicted a E F in my GCSE mathematics. It wasn't until my mum found a private tutor and he suggested that I might have some form of dyslexia as well. But again, it wasn't taken seriously in secondary school, that I was actually able to get a C, and that was because I had the one-to-one attention that I needed and that I was given the time I was needed to comprehend the tasks that I was given. In primary school, I was labelled as a naughty child. I was labelled as a disruptive child. I was labelled as lazy. I was very low attaining. I was incompetent, and it's all these sort of words that you hear as a child, and they're using long words that they think you don't understand, but actually I was able to comprehend the vocabulary they were using. I just wasn't able to use it myself. I wasn't able to spell properly. There's still many words I struggle to spell now, and it's because of that misdiagnosis that I was not given a fair opportunity when it came to examinations. So in GCSE level, I was capped at a C. That was the highest grade I was allowed to get in maths. I was not allowed to take the intermediate paper because they thought that there was no point in taking it and bringing down the average score. I was also capped into the mixed class group in English, even though at the time my verbal vocabulary and my comprehension of text was very good and my understanding of poetry was very good, because it took me a lot longer to read, because obviously at 20 years old I had a reading comprehension of a 15-year-old. Back then I would have had a reading comprehension of about a 10-year-old when I was about 15. That I was capped in the middle classes, even though in my coursework for English I was getting A's. So I just needed to be given that extra time to practice, that extra time to comprehend. I wasn't just a low attaining child, and it really frustrated me because I didn't feel like I was getting the help that I needed. I was also put in middle attaining groups, which were often forgotten about in my school system. So during science once, the high attaining children in the top class got to go to Thorpe Park in a science experiment, and the lower attaining children in the bottom classes were allowed to go to Thorpe Park as part of an enrichment experience, and the middle attaining children got to stay at school and do a science experiment during science. So it really disheartened me. I actually became a bit, I know I just completely lost interest in what I was doing. It became a real barrier to my education. I no longer wanted to do the homework. I no longer wanted to do the work. I just felt like, what was the point? It became quite depressing, because I knew I was capable of doing more, but I didn't feel like I was getting the help that I needed. And my maths teacher, especially in GCSE, was not particularly helpful at all. She just said to my mum that I was disruptive and naughty and that I should actually be in a lower class. But my maths tutor outside of school said that I would have been more than capable of getting a B had I been given the support that I needed, but I was capped at the lower paper. So that's my personal learning barriers that I've overcome. My husband has Asperger's, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and ADHD. So he's overcome an awful lot of barriers as well. He was always labelled as the naughty kid. He actually unfortunately got expelled from both primary school and secondary school. It became a really big barrier for learning. He was often excluded out of class. He is a very intelligent man. He's now a fireman. He's passed all of his examinations, all of his physical tests for it, and is doing extremely well for himself, considering he's been given a very unfair advantage in the education system. He would refuse to go back to education because of the experience he had from being misdiagnosed from a young age as a naughty child. Actually, he needed a lot more support and he was just not given it. And even when they did have the paperwork, the teachers refused to sort of almost believe it. These are just our personal experiences. They've become a major barrier of learning. Throughout my family, we've got other diagnoses of ADHD, other diagnoses of ASD. We also have a lot of dyslexia in my family. Quite a lot of it has gone undiagnosed. It's only recently that my nieces and nephews have started getting the support that they need, which is really encouraging to see how times have changed. But the rest of the poster will be about misdiagnosis. Being an SEN myself, it's a bit close to heart, and being a Senko of a preschool, it's very close to my heart to make sure that children are getting the right support and they continue to receive the support once they've left my care. So I was in charge of doing their reports, I was in charge of doing their learning support plans, and I was in charge of doing their transitions into school. So I understand personally how a misdiagnosis can affect education and affect the personal education, but I also know how it can affect younger children as well. And if they're not given their support, then it makes it a very big barrier to overcome, and it also makes you lose faith in yourself, which is the last thing we want to do in education. We want children to believe that they are capable and they are they are able to do what they need to do, and sometimes in life they just need to learn how to do it slightly differently. So we just need to create that inclusive environment, and make sure that if they are being misdiagnosed, or the support plan they have in place isn't working, that things need to be changed for them in order to make it an inclusive environment for all. Thank you for listening.